Hello, everyone. Welcome to everyone here in the room as well as online. This is a lecture hosted by the 21st Century China Center at GPS. My name is Michael Davidson. I'm an associate professor here at GPS and in the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering. And so we're really delighted today to have Dr. Weila Gong with us, who is a non-resident scholar at 21CCC here. She has 10 years of experience in climate and environmental politics issues. She had her PhD in political science from Technical University of Munich and has had postdoctoral fellowships at Georgetown and Harvard Kennedy School, which is where I met Weila. And she was recently a climate policy fellow at that other school in UC, Berkeley, which School of Law there. And so we're very delighted today to have her give her very first book talk of her new book, Implementing a Low Carbon Future, Climate Leadership in Chinese Cities. So this is by Oxford Press. So I'm told the ebook is now available if you want to quickly read it while she's giving the talk and have your very in-depth questions by a Q&A session. The print version, you'll have to wait 2 weeks, but you can pre-order now. So this is our, as I was mentioning, this is the first book talk of this book, so we're really excited. This is a hybrid one, so the event is going to be recorded. We are going to have, for online attendees, you can submit questions in the Q&A box, and we will include those in our during the Q&A portion after Weila's discussion. So with that, let me turn it over to Weila.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, hello everyone. First of all, I want to thank the China Center for the invitation. It's my great pleasure to be here to present my work and discuss the low carbon future, how cities matter in China. So what is a low carbon future? Why should we care about cities in China in its transition towards a low carbon future? In 2020, the Chinese President Xi pledged that China aims to achieve carbon emission peaks before 2030 and attain carbon neutral, meaning net zero carbon emissions before 2060. Cities account for over 85% of China's total carbon emissions. In that sense, the extent to which China can achieve its climate goals is in large dependent on whether those cities can become truly low carbon. I wrote a book titled Implementing a Low Carbon Future, Climate Leadership in Chinese Cities. So this is a regional study I conducted in 4 low carbon pilot cities, drawing on over 100 interviews, as well as process tracing and comparative studies to tackle the question, why are some Chinese cities are doing better than others in initiating and implementing low carbon policy in a centralized political system? We need to know more about subnational climate actions because no national climate targets can be achieved without subnational actions. Ensuring continued subnational policy engagement in achieving climate goals also ensures progress towards decarbonization despite changes in national leadership. Subnational climate diplomacy have also been seen as a source for keeping international collaboration on climate issues despite rising geopolitical tensions between major powers. So in the world, there are over 3,000 cities and local regions that have pledged their climate targets. But we know very little about the extent to which actually they are acting on implementing their climate goals. And what are the key challenges and opportunities for those regions in achieving their goals? Recent research shows that only less than 10% of those local areas and regions are on track of achieving some of their climate goals. So how can we understand the local variation in terms of translating those climate pledges into real actions on the ground?
No clue.
Okay. So I look at China. Why should we look at China? China is the world's largest carbon emitter, followed by the United States, European Union countries. So the extent to which China can become low carbon will also shape the direction of global efforts in achieving climate goals. So we've heard recently a lot about this China trade wars. It's also about low carbon energy transition, as it involves a lot of those deployment of clean technology. Also those like minerals actually can help us achieve those low carbon goals. So we tend to think that China is a centralized political system, but China also has an element of multi-level governance. So the subnational government in China started to pick up actions of addressing climate change since 2010, particularly through low carbon policy experimentation. So in experimentation, the national government give a lot of leeway to local areas and the regions in terms of target setting and also choose different policy paths to achieve the goals. So my book is focused on the National Low Carbon City Pilot Program between 2010 and 2018. So there are 81 cities joined the National Pilot Program. So those cities, they have pledged a specific target to reduce their carbon emission across the building sector, transportation sector, and energy sector. But as we can see that only 17 cities actually were able to build a platform to collect carbon emission data. Even fewer cities actually built a level of policy institutionalization consisting of standards, regulations, and legislation that are important to keep continued policy actions despite the change of political leaders. So how can we understand the local variation and the uneven policy implementation of Chinese cities in the low carbon energy transition in China? So here are two examples cases in my study. So both Shenzhen and Xiamen joined the national pilot programs at the same time. They are also similar in variety of ways in terms of their economic development stage, in terms of the GDP per capita, as well as they're also known for environmentally friendly. But only Shenzhen has achieved the most substantial engagement by building a level of policy institutionalization. So after joining the national pilot program, Shenzhen was able to introduce a series of institutional efforts, such as including China's first local emission trading system. Shenzhen used to be a fishing village next to Hong Kong, but now it's the world's, I think some of the leading cities host the largest number of electric vehicle fleets running on the street. Shenzhen also has fostered a globally competitive electric vehicle industry. So not every city seems like Shenzhen, including Xiamen. Xiamen is known as a tourist city and it's very environmentally friendly. And Xiamen, when it joined the national program, it proposed a very ambitious urban renewal project with the application of low carbon standards. But that project was never materialized. So for people, they're interested in understanding the differences, usually would say, okay, if the two cities both have political supports, we would expect a similar outcome in the implementation, but actually they are delivering totally different policy outcome. How can we explain the variation between cities' involvement in low carbon actions? So what the existing literature tells us about local responses towards environmental and low carbon actions is all about interesting groups influence, central local relations, and political leadership. But the low carbon policy experiments are not led or influenced by business interests. Actually, the business sectors was very skeptical towards regulating carbon emissions. They were thinking that is a way of government rent seeking. Then, what people didn't know, central local relations plays a very important role in local government behavior in China. Would expect that it should be some like political or financial incentives that can motivate local officials' response towards like low carbon actions. But actually, when the low carbon pilot experimentation created by the national government in 2010, there were no like bureaucratic evaluation criteria actually reflect the low carbon issue as a benefit either to the officials' career advancement or actually provide any financial support for local policy actions. And we tend to know mayors and party secretaries are very important players in leading cities acting on climate or new initiatives. But we also know that the turnovers of those mayors usually lead to policy and also policy action disruptions at the local areas and regions. So the existing literature are not very helpful for us to understand the uneven local policy engagement in climate actions. And my research also argues that we need to move beyond the current focus on the distributive politics, meaning picking winners and losers in the transition, towards seeking solutions. So my research emphasizes the capacity of local government in creating solutions to dealing with the challenges like mobilize the resources for low carbon transition, particularly emphasizing the role of local bureaucrats in initiating and maintaining low carbon policy actions. So this is my answer to the question of uneven local policy engagement in low carbon energy transition. I argue that region leadership matters. So I define the region leadership as the process that bureaucratic entrepreneurs mobilize the resources needed to translate those low carbon goals into sustained actions. So there are three components in my in my theoretic framework. So first is region leaders. Then region leaders need to deploy three types of strategies to translate the climate goals into sustained actions lead to the building of policy institutionalization, meaning the regulation standards and the legislations as policy outcomes. So who are the region leaders? So in this research, I mentioned that I find that unlike in the more democratic systems, such as in the US, researcher tends to say like anyone can be policy entrepreneurs as long as they invest energy, resources, and time. My research shows that in China's centralized political systems, middle-level bureaucrats are often the candidates of becoming policy entrepreneurs. I call them bureaucratic entrepreneurs. So they serve as the implementation bridge to mobilize political support and the local implementation coalitions. So they're at the middle level. So they're the ones not move around every 3 or 5 years. They can stay one locality almost their entire career. That gave them the insights into the politics, policy, and process, know how to mobilize the resources that requires to translate those goals into actions. So I find the three strategies are important for sustained low carbon policy actions. For those who are familiar with the policy process literature would remember that the political empathy in the bureaucratic system and the lacking of coalition have been seen as the key challenges for anyone promote a new issue area in the political system or in the policy system. So I find that the bureaucratic entrepreneurs tend to use three strategies to overcome the challenges. So first, we need the political support from the top leaders. So local governments are very busy with different tasks assigned by the central government. How the local bureaucrats can move the new issue areas to get the political attention. They need to persuade their boss, like the players and party secretary, the benefits and the cost of acting on low carbon issues. After winning the political support, they can try to build more of a coalition between different bureaucratic agencies for joint efforts to promote these new issue areas. Second, they need to create a group of trained personnel to provide policy solutions to policy challenges. So John Given usually mentioned that policy entrepreneurs like a hero can provide the policy solutions to policy challenges. But actually, policy entrepreneurs are like us. They only have 24 hours. They actually rely on a group of trained personnel, such as professors, researchers inside and outside government, to research the policy challenges and provide solution. And after that, the bureaucratic entrepreneurs need to know where and how they reach out to important key local actors, such as local legislators, important business actors, to build a coalition to overcome the potential oppositions in the implementation stage. So here I want to quickly let you know like how I designed this research. So I designed this research in a 4-case comparative study. So a part of those 2 cases I just mentioned, the Shenzhen and Xiamen. The third case is Zhenjiang. So Zhenjiang is a city located in Jiangsu province. It serves as the coal-powered electricity generation center supplying electricity for the eastern China. So this city is known for its low carbon initiative because it was able to create specialized agency to enforce low carbon actions and also create regulations to screening local investment. But this city was not able entirely to enforce or deliver the policy goals because of the pushback from the power sector. Then the 4th case is Nanchang. Nanchang is an inland city, so it was aspired to promote low carbon development to show as a model for the inland cities economic catching up. So it was one of the first cities that put a legislation on low carbon development, and as a visible like policy initiative to attract the potential like investment as well as the investment from the national government. But the policy entrepreneur in Nanchang was not really care about enforcement. So the focus on create visible project to attract external investments. So for the 4 cases, you can see that they are similar in variety of alternative variables we can think of, such as energy efficiency, economic levels, bureaucratic incentives for policy, like international connections or the kind of political support. But over years, they actually delivered a different policy outcome in terms of the level of policy institutionalization. So in order to answer the question, so I took a comparative qualitative approach with method including expert interviews that includes over 100 interviews with policy practitioners across different levels of government, inside and outside government, as well as process tracing and analysis of original government documents. This is a photo that I was on the field trip in a wind farm in Jiangsu province. So this is a typology of different types of subnational involvement in low carbon policy engagement. So depending on the ability of bureaucratic entrepreneurs in mobilizing political support and implementation alliance, local government have been demonstrated the different types of engagement in delivering climate goals. So for those areas of high level political support as well as implementation alliance, they are able to deliver the climate, the actions that can help them to achieve the goals. So they are involved in substantive engagement. But those areas, they are of weak support and implementation alliance, they are unable to deliver the goals that set for achieving a low carbon city. So they usually involve more of a random policy initiatives without like continued and sustained policy actions. So because of the time limit, I will only focus on these two types of engagement. I also have like identified cases of promoted engagement as a goal engagement, but I'm also happy to take any questions in the Q&A. So let's move to the case. So Shenzhen is the best case in my research. So after joining the pilot program, Shenzhen has created a high level of policy institutionalization, as just mentioned, the regulation standards legislation, including the first low carbon emission trading scheme in China. So low carbon emission trading scheme, is a policy instrument that the government created to motivate carbon emitters to do the credit trading. So when Shenzhen learned about these opportunities, actually how Shenzhen become a pilot and become one of the cities launch the pilot project, it all comes down to the Vice Mayor Tang. So Vice Mayor Tang was the bureaucrat entrepreneur in Shenzhen. So Vice Mayor was not considered as the top leader in cities because they tended to stay at one locality for almost their entire career. So I heard about this like experimentation pilot project opportunity. The bureaucrat entrepreneur with the support from the mayor that convinced them the importance of that to make Shenzhen a pilot. Then the mayor and the bureaucrat entrepreneur Vice Mayor Tang went to Beijing and persuaded the National Development and Reform Commission to make Shenzhen a national pilot. After that, they was able to create a study group to design the Shenzhen emission trading system. Of particularly importance is that the mayor towns are able to reach out to the local people's congress and pass a legislation that requires over 700 of industrial actors to join the emission trading system compulsory. So after that, Shenzhen launched this carbon emission trading system. Then, yeah, it became one of the first local cities, successfully promoted the initiation. So this shows you the timeline how Tang with the political support and also the national support to make Shenzhen a national pilot for carbon emission trading system. Then how create a study group consisting of professionals to learn the design of the emission trading system, also learning from those actors from EU countries. Then after that, they reach out to the local coalition that passed the legislation and made also Shenzhen one of the first cities have a legislation on carbon emission trading system. So even after Tang retired and the mayor appointed, Shenzhen emission trading system didn't get affected during the leadership change. So, and here I will show you some of the empirical interview quotes I collected during my interview. So the first is I talked with an official, worked very closely with Mayor Tang during the time Shenzhen emission trading system was set up. So he described the role of Mayor Tang as Mayor Tang conveyed the urgency of the emission trading pilot to the Shenzhen Municipal People's Congress. He mobilized his contacts and networks from his time as the vice director of the committee of the People's Congress. So that means even in a centralized political system, we tend to think officials are obedient and also lacking of power. So they are able to build coalitions among the key actors to promote the policy actions they are interested in. Then after a few years, I was really care about whether the initiative can continue after Tang left the office. So the CEO of the Shenzhen emission trading system told me that our work has not changed much since Vice Mayor Tang left the office. at Shenzhen ETS, we have 40 to 50 employees, and we are regularly in contact with Shenzhen Development and Reform Commission as we operate the system. So that means despite the changes in local leadership, low carbon actions can continue once they have been integrated into the existing policy system. Then let's move to the mobility case in my study in Xiamen. So Xiamen joined the pilot program at the same time as Shenzhen did, and it promoted ambitious action plan with the urban renewal project, with the proposed application of low carbon standard in building, designing the district. But it didn't materialize. How it happened? So it all because of the loss of bureaucrat entrepreneur, Deputy Director Lin. So Deputy Director Lin was the Deputy Director of the Construction Administration in Xiamen. So Lin was able to work with a group of officers to design Xiamen's low carbon city action plan. But after Xiamen selected as a national pilot, the authority over implementing the low carbon city pilot has shifted from the construction administration to the development and reform commission, where no official showed interest in low carbon issue. After that, the low carbon issue was almost entirely shelved in the government. So this shows you the timeline how Xiamen responded to the low carbon issues around 2010, 2018. So Deputy Lin actually was able to work with its team to give Xiamen a low carbon action plan that helped Xiamen to win its title as a low carbon pilot city. But the next year, the shifting of power, administrative power happened between the two agencies. Then when the new agency didn't have people interested in the low carbon issue, once the new mayor took office with a totally new development strategy, almost nobody really cares about the low carbon issues in Xiamen, except a very temporary initiative took place in Xiamen in 2018. So I also want to show you some interview quotes from my research in Xiamen, learn about the policy process. So I talked with a national official dealing with the policy experimentation program. So she mentioned that Xiamen was very active at the beginning, but I didn't know who is in charge of the low carbon pilot program as they changed the contact person too often. So that means if you do not have a people who can regularly provide feedback to the higher level of government, then it's very hard for the local government to sustain its low carbon action. Then I was talking with a professor who won a research grant from the Xiamen government on a low carbon project. Then he told me that when I met him again after a few years, he mentioned that low carbon is a thing of the past already. Now Xiamen is all for beautiful Xiamen strategy. So we see that with new political leader took office, then the low carbon issues was basically shelved. And finally, I talked with officials who know very well the implementation of low carbon pilot project in the city. He mentioned that the challenge with Xiamen is low carbon issues that there's no net agent we can work with, unlike that in Shenzhen to improve the implementation. So that means even though the kind of political willingness is very important at the beginning to start the project, but if you cannot really have the bureaucratic entrepreneur to mobilize local support and alliance, then it's very hard for even a very environmentally friendly city to continue its effort to decarbon its economy. So here I want to summarize, emphasize the theoretical contribution of this book. So my book tried to explain the uneven policy experimentation, the uneven local engagement in implementing low carbon experimentation in China. So in contrast to conventional wisdom with a focus on the role of people leadership, I emphasize the importance of bureaucratic entrepreneurs in initiating and promoting low carbon policy actions, sustain the low carbon policy actions. And I emphasize there are three strategies that the bureaucratic entrepreneurs often use to mobilize the resources to sustain the implementation, particularly through winning critical support, gathering trained personnel to provide policy solutions to policy challenges, as well as building alliance to overcome the potential oppositions in the implementation. And also of particularly importance is that when we think about how to make those low carbon actions durable in local areas and regions, when you think about how to build a level of policy institutionalization like regulations, standards, and the legislation in the experimentation process. Of particularly importance also is the creation of a group of trained personnel who are willing to and also capable to enforce those regulations so that can sustain the local initiation and lead to long-term change at the local areas and regions. So that's lead to the end of my presentation. Thank you.
All right. Why don't we sit here and send it?
Okay.
We'll start with some questions from the audience, but I'll get us started here. I don't want to think about your questions. So excellent talk. I wanted to think about connecting this to, I think, a very classical problem in Chinese political economy, which is policy implementation gaps. And what I hear from your stories is you articulate how leaders and resource mobilization lead to proper implementation, durable implementation policies. Is that how do we think about this connecting to the classical central local problem, which is usually framed as a principal agent issue, where the center has some policy target, objective, and ask local officials to achieve them and incentivize them through various, say, performance metrics or accountability systems. And then the challenge is how do you ensure that amongst all the other objectives? So I guess is that the same way to think about it, or is that the wrong way to think about what you're seeing in low carbon, or do local officials have other innate incentives to go low carbon besides what the center wants them to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually my research also really talks to the literature of central local relation, and that is how the book actually started with when I think about how to explain those uneven implementation. But I think what is very unique here, the kind of questions I'm tackling in this book is the policy experimentation. So usually they're dealing with new issue areas that have not been institutionalized in the existing policy system. So they are lacking political attention, they are lacking resources. So how and why those local officials are willing to deal with those new issues actually didn't give them immediate returns like promotion or economic benefits. I think you're really also your question pointed to the question about incentives, right? So if those experimentation cannot really give those officials immediate political and financial benefits, why they spend extra time, right, to take on these new issue areas. I think the things from my experience talking with those officials, I found that there can be several reasons. The one is at the organizational level. So one is the bureaucratic agency, they trying to win the title of the pilot project. They usually start with thinking about whether they can get some investment or join the project from the higher level of government. So it's seen as opportunity. But I think some of the key challenges is with implementation, right? How after you win the title, how you actually deliver the goal. So that really needs the bureaucrats to be very entrepreneur in a way to think about, okay, how can we help my boss to get recognition? If we can promote visible and durable actions can lead to change, that helps my boss. that as well, that also helps me to get promotion. So I think that is like, it's challenging more the our conventional understanding about, okay, uh, local officials always need to see the benefits at the first place, like the bureaucratic evaluation system in the first place, but actually it's not. They are more thinking about how they can also advance advance their own career by helping their boss to get more new opportunities. Then the second level is once the bureaucrat those bureaucrats they invest more time and energy in helping building the reputation of the city, like on this low carbon, they actually want to um, institutionalize those initiatives because if they introduce more regulation standards, that actually help them to claim their authority, new regulate a new issue area. So actually, they're acting in the interest of strengthening their administrative power in regulating this new issue areas by introducing regulation standards. So those local officials, they're not to change very often. They want the policy actions can make impact, can build upon those small initiatives and build more long-term change. So they have more incentives than those like majors to make changes.
Yeah, that's great, and it connects back to some more classical theories of bureaucratic politics as well.
Yeah.
More questions? Yeah.
So thanks so much for your talk. So I have a few questions or things that I was still kind of hoping to get some more stuff from the book on. So is part of your story that competent bureaucratic entrepreneurs just exist in a place like Shenzhen but not Xiamen? Sort of, if so, why do they seem to exist in Shenzhen? What's motivating them? Like, what causes a vice mayor 6 years from retirement to devote so much energy to this particular topic? It seems like he's an important figure for all this. Why is this guy the guy that pushed all this? And then what sort of determines their success in seizing political support and forging alliances? Is just the presence of these savvy bureaucratic entrepreneurs who know how to use their connections effectively? Or are there some things about the environments they're operating in that make success or failure more likely? Those are the questions I had. Thanks so much.
Wow, I think that's a really important question. It actually points to whether is it just random, right? You got very lucky, you have this bureaucrat, so you can become a leader in the field, or actually are there any conditions we can expect from some of the localities we may see they can be as leaders in some new issue policy areas? Yeah. Yeah, I think there can be two level of analysis. So at more the institutional level, organizational level, we've known that there's always a need for the environment, like the institutional level. They allow those officials to make mistakes. So we know that recent research also shows that the tightening up of those like not censorship, but like if we kind of trying to punish those local officials, they are trying to promote new ideas and particularly new ways of build up new issue areas through experimentation. We can see less and less officials willing to take new issue areas to do experimentation. I think so first you need to allow those local officials to make mistakes. Then the second is I've seen those like local officials, they are more willing to take on low carbon issue because it's so new. Sometimes it's also very has the technology complexity. They usually to have some trainings in science. So I see the entrepreneur, so Tang, so he is a PhD economist. Then the deputy director Lee, he is also a PhD in like building sector. So I think they like to understand more. They open to the new ideas and how to use new technology to increase the and help the local areas to achieve their low carbon goals. Then they are also getting more of a chance to, I think in their career at some point they are more connected to the international environment. They are exposed to new ideas through their international connections. So you can see them in those training programs when there is an international organization try to kind of do the training to help the local government to understand the emission trading system or climate change. They are the ones in the group to listen and to learn. And the third is that they need to be in powerful bureaucratic agencies who can build coalitions. So I see, so some of also the reason why the links agency was not able to coordinate the implementation because it's more specialized in building sector. So that shows the implementation in compared to if an official he or she is affiliated with is part of the development reform commissions. So kind of coordinating macroeconomic planning and implementation, they are in more advantageous position to build a coalition. So these are some of the findings that I can learn from my research to answer your question.
Yes, okay, 3 games, we'll start this. Yes.
Thank you so much for the wonderful talk. I learned a lot. I'm looking forward to read your book. I have 2 questions. So the first question is the role on local interest groups. So we were talking about the existing wisdom, and you're saying like, oh, whether they actually can mobilize to block government regulations. But I think there's actually a different side to the story, right? Because I think usually those low carbon emission policies in China are considered as industrial policies. So they're probably both sides. There are interest groups who are against, this type of regulatory government intervention. There are also groups or business interests that revolves or organize around trying to get more government subsidies from government, policy benefits to actually benefit their own sector or industry. So I was thinking about that in the 2 cases that are presenting to us. So the Shenzhen versus Xiamen, right? Shenzhen, there are a lot of tech sector, so they're probably innovative and they're creating a lot of new technology that can be spread out in other regions. But Xiamen is more, as you said, service focused, tourism. So government policy instruments are more probably limited. They're probably more regulatory and interventionist. So I'm just wondering how you're actually playing the interest groups, like both sides of the interest groups, to interact with the government initiative or policy or requires. And the second is just I'm very curious because I think the timeline that you showed us actually coincided with the anti-corruption campaign. And my impression was that during that time period, there are a lot of local government paralysis. So even though they have the ambition, they probably don't have a lot of resources or initiatives to do the things that they want to do. So I'm just wondering, because you've done a lot of great field work, I'm curious to know what's your observation during that time period. Is it because certain anti-corruption campaign groups, when they visited, the policy window actually open and close, right? So if you have some outside sources intervening, you probably not be able to do the things that you want to do and can do, and then the policy window just closed. So I'm just curious if you can share more with us in terms of what you observed in the field.
Yeah, I think that also fascinating questions. Yeah. So for the first question, interest groups, I agree with you. So it looks like Shenzhen has more diversified economic structures with more of the tech companies. They tended to seem as the supporter for local management. So in comparison with Shenzhen, it's more reliant on maybe industrial, like tourism, some of the oil company. They have also some that's part of the chemical industry. But I think for the kind of question, I think one thing I haven't really answered in the book is, why we don't see the influence from those like renewable industrial coalition to push further the local action. That's something I didn't see from my book, but maybe it's good for others to explore.
Is it also more recent?
Yeah.
Maybe
Because your field work cut at 2018, right?
2010, 2018. But if you think about the rise of the clean industry, it should be back to 2000. So but the thing is, like, I didn't see, like, at least for the experimentation project. So they are more I think it's more from the government's perspective. So like how to for the government, how to promote the decarbonization across board, building, energy, and transportation to really decarbon local economic growth, less dependent on the consumption of fossil fuels. So I didn't see very active participation from the industrial sector in influencing this process, like give the legitimacy for low carbon development, to do more investment in technology. I didn't see that. I think it's I think maybe there's some other research can help us to better understand that. Yeah. So what I saw is, as I mentioned, is more skeptical. So, yeah, why you want to create a carbon emission trading system? I want to get more revenue for us. Yeah, so that is, yeah, what I observed from my project. And the second question is anti-corruption. So I remember anti-corruption is more from 2013 afterwards, right? So actually that is, there are some like overlapping like with the observation I have done. I feel like those cities are really active around like 2013, maybe before that. I think a lot of the initiative was promoted during that time. Then I visit like those case areas, 2012, 2013, 2018. So there are some like cities that continue their experimentation, like Shenzhen, and also one of another case. I didn't like give very detailed description. Yeah, Zhenjiang. But I think that maybe because I didn't really see like corruption as a very important factor to disrupt their engagement, but more of the national level climate institutional recognition around like 2017. A lot of local areas in the regions, like officials are waiting. Okay, if I belong to the Development Reform Commission, where I ship it to the Ministry of Ecology and Environment. So a lot of like local areas are waiting. I think that actually disrupted their like engagement or the initiatives. But for like Shenzhen, because it already creates the institution and also specialized agency like people to enforce those regulations, so we can see they are continue doing the like emission trading. So, but I can see also right. So it seems there are less new initiation was promoted after 2013, particularly around the time 2017. Yeah. Thank you.
I have two hands here and then, okay, go ahead.
So hi, thank you for your really enjoyed the talk. So I had one question, which was that wouldn't you say that Shenzhen is like one of the biggest cities in China, where would be the most pressing need for reducing carbon emissions? So, like say Zhenjiang or Shenzhen, like there we would have seen some action taken to reduce carbon emissions because it was the worst there. And my second question, like partly related to, like she said, local interest groups. I believe BYD is based out of Shenzhen, so wouldn't you like? I think that you would see like lobbying from local industries to get further traction for their industries in the local areas.
Interesting. Yeah. So the first question is about whether because Shenzhen has higher need for the transition, so that actually motivates the city to do more efforts in trying to decarbonize. Yeah. I think the things like when we think about the willingness for a city to make the transition, then we are thinking about where the willingness comes from, right? So I think like a lot of like I think analysis when I think about whether the city is more willing to take on new actions either for decarbonize its economy or to dealing with pollution, it's always kind of linked to the people leaders because the city cannot like just act as an organization, right? So I think that when we think about the motivation, it also kind of linked to a level of analysis whether the people leaders are motivated to do that. So I think that is the first questions. Are those areas they're dealing with different kinds of issues, right? You need to maintain the economic development at the same time to do the decarbonization efforts. Then there's a lot of like capacity building need to be built, like where the data comes from, right? So there's not just I think the demand is important, right? So because some cities are like willing to be a leader in green transformation, like California, like an environmental leader, but it's not just I think it's the only reason. So we still need to think about okay, if the city is kind of in a good position to make change, like the city Xiamen is also very environment friendly. We have the assumption environment friendly city is support low carbon, but it actually didn't happen. So I think the next question is about if the city are in good position to support the low carbon, how it can be happen, right? What kind of I think the strategies either the government or the non-government actors need to deploy it to make things happen. So I think what you mentioned is like, what do you think it's important, but I think it's also important to look at what is like in implementation, can you translate what you think into actions? Like what happened in your brain into what your action? So I think that are the things we need to think about when we think about whether certain type of cities are more willing to take the lead. And the second interest groups, I think is I want to briefly touch the issue because Laura also mentioned that. I think in the literature of interest group, particularly based on the democratic systems, they tend to obstruct the energy transition, like oil companies and more conventional interests. They are not really the kind of driving forces behind the more climate actions. So, and I think I'm also very interested to learn about whether are there any like climate groups, not or the renewable industry or those like industry, we tend to think they are supporters for low carbon transition can make a higher impact, like from the industrial sector. But I didn't see that so far. I think it's happened in China. So yeah, we're still thinking there is a lot of efforts need to be done to like forge a stronger climate coalition among like industrial actors. Yeah. Thank you.
I think it's a really interesting observation, and people will probably point to BYD and say, oh, look, BYD must have been the one pushing Shenzhen to become a low carbon city. But in fact, the two may be completely unrelated. They may have very little political power when Shenzhen is making this low carbon transition.
Yeah.
So I had two hands quickly, Zhong Lei, and then we can see if there's any questions online. So briefly, we'll pull these together. Go ahead.
Oh, wow. My first question is, in your presentations, we made a comparison to 4 cities, Shenzhen, Zhenjiang, Xiamen, and Shenzhen. But those 4 cities sound super different to me. As Nanchang is the capital city of Jiangxi, Shenzhen is a special economic district, and Zhenjiang is only the number 10th GDP-wise in Jiangsu. Would you say like there were different competition between local cities for political support? For example, Nanjiang or Shenzhen, it might be much more easier to gain political support as their city standing than Zhenjiang. My second question is, you mentioned totally different education background of these leaders. For example, the vice mayor Tang is PhD of economics, and also the vice mayor of the cities, which might be have a better position coordinating all of the other agencies. Where in Xiamen, the deputy, what was the name? Ling, he's only the deputy of the construction department, who considerably has less power than the vice mayors, and totally different backgrounds. And should we attribute the success to the institutionalizations or the very leaders who are actually developing the program or setting up the stage?
And we'll question the room, so thanks for your question.
So I think these are all good questions, and I just have an observation and a question. Observation is, it seems like China, hearing your talk, and also now this is, China probably is the only country where all this climate action, carbon neutrality discussions happen in the government sector without involving, much of the societal input. So I don't know if you, in the book, if you looked at even the non-governmental activists in the cities, Xiamen used to have very active environmental groups. Why Shenzhen, and what role did they play? What they have no role at all. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there's no role for them at all, right? And the same for the interest groups, right? Industry groups. My question is, I want to bring in these pilot program into the picture, because that has come from the top, from the central government. And you mentioned there were about 70 cities that were selected into these programs, presumably because these cities wanted to curry favor with the central department, or the central department was looking at these cities as something that they would like to work closely with. Have you done a sort of more kind of use the same metrics that you used in your qualitative study of these cases to score these 70 cities, right? Like on the outcome side, outcome, how, you mentioned only 7 to 9% of the cities worldwide achieve their goal. Does China have the same kind of track record, or 95% of them achieve their goal, which usually is the case? Right? Did you do that, or do you think that's something that's easy to do, or is really difficult? I mean, if you use the same kind of way of judging whether one case is successful, another case is failure, you score all the entire 70 cities.
Yeah, I think that's.
You probably need tons of RAs like Michael.
Yeah, that's very, I think exciting project and to build on, then I think it can build with the larger understanding about what is the status, right?
Yeah.
How actually the cities are progressing, achieving their goals, yeah, so that's really a great idea for the next project, yeah. Yeah, but okay, so I move with maybe, okay, yeah, so I think the first is, the favor. I think I'm looking at the note, although you mentioned that, so it looks like those cities are very different to you, right? So I think that is a comparison, so you cannot really find totally similar cities in comparison, but I think the condition is all the cities, they do not really have much prior experience in taking on this new issue areas like low carbon, right? So I think that is some of the similar conditions. They are new, they join the program at the same time, even though they have different practice before. And also for those local areas, it's also challenging. You need to think about how much resources you can achieve out of those like experimentation program. So that is also linked to Lay's our kind of thoughts about, okay, you have all the cities, they wanted to jump on, right, to become a pilot, but I think that the book is also really talking about is how about the implication, right? So a lot of those cities can be willing to become the pilot, but over the years, if there is not substantial output, we can gain from those experimentation. Why we do that, and if there is no substantial output, what happened, right? So I think that is really the book trying to deal with. To think about whether the driving forces can keep those cities moving on achieving the climate target, particularly from the more institutional level, understanding, and also the people economy perspective. I think you're right. Yeah, I think it should be a very exciting next project to look at. Yeah, the large scale, right? So to do the mapping, I think it's still possible. There are some like non-government organizations doing the job, right? Trying to collect different like level of analysis, try to look at the different regulation standards introduced by different cities. But I think the next thing will also it's easier to put up regulation standards and also action plan rather than if you think about the output, how much those get implemented, right? So I think it's still important to emphasize we need the creation of trained personnel to follow through those implementation process. So yeah, I think also
Do you think the NDRC, the department that started the pilot program, keeps a scorecard?
they had actually the NDRC was charged the agency in charge of the national pilot program, then it shifted to the Ministry of Ecology and Environment because the Department of Climate Change shifted from the NDRC to MEE. They had published like some reports, but I didn't see like more of a systematic like tracing about the implementation process. But I see like some NGOs they're now building database to track the policy initiation in terms of what kind of policy local government have been proposed. Yeah, but I think it's possible to do that. Yeah, it's the really more the larger case study.
Well, fascinating. I'm really sorry to cut this short, but thank you, Weila, for such an engaging talk. Wanted to just to note, we have two more lectures coming up in the China Center. The first is virtual only. Oh, we're pulling up this slide now.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it, but I can't.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
that one, maybe click the next. Well, as we get up there, so the first one is going to be, okay, yes. First one is going to be, next week, next Tuesday. It's virtual only, but on a fascinating topic of US-China-India relations. We're gonna have some, very distinguished, experts in this area speaking. And then, later next week, we'll have a hybrid talk, from Michelle Moore from Berkeley, talking about CCP's rise. So that should be quite interesting as well. Thank you again for joining us, and see you next time.